Welcome, everybody. We're glad you're back with us, and we hope you've enjoyed the previous two sessions. Tonight or today, whenever you happen to be watching this, we're going to be sharing great dialogue with tremendous guests that we're so privileged and honored to have with us, sharing their expertise. And today we're going to be talking about creating your path, your own path. And these people come to this from a variety of perspectives. They're all profoundly successful artists and people, and they have an amazing amount of things to share with each of us. I can't wait to go through this as well. But let me introduce my great colleague, Joe Parisi, to you, and he's going to tell us a little bit about our guests. Joe?
Thank you, Steve. To our guests on the panel, I'm just going to do a quick brief, like, here's who you are. And I want you to just say hey to the folks on the conference call here on the chat. So first of all, we are thrilled that you are joining us. I don't know anywhere else we would have a dancer, a composer, a euphonium, and conductor all in one room, plus two other conductors who are out of work right now. So, hey, you know, we're thrilled to have you. So I'd like to introduce to you, these are all professors at universities that have done a varied amount of work in their disciplines. So we have a associate professor of modern dance, and that's Gary Abbott. And Gary, say hey to the folks.
Hello to the folks. Hope you are doing good. I'm happy to be here. I really am. Very honored.
We're thrilled to have you. And we have an assistant professor of composition, and she is also, and I will whisper this, but an alum of UMKC. That is Ingrids.
Hi, everybody.
And my friend from Summit Brass, and also the euphonium professor at Indiana and Stanford, and conductor extraordinaire and player, and et cetera, Damondre Thurman.
What's happening, everybody? Good to see you.
We are thrilled to have you. And let me preface the series of questions you're about to receive, and Steve will start with our first one. We have over 100 students involved in this opportunity as a result of COVID-19, where they're doing an online observing of these panel discussions and responding to some poignant articles related to the subjects. And they all submitted questions. And so the ones that you are about to get encapsulate the majority of the themes that arose from all their questions. So these are really generated from our students at the conservatory. We're just thrilled that we have such great students that want to ask experts like you these questions. So we appreciate your openness and willingness and honesty to help us and help them. So I'll turn it over to Steve as we start. Thanks again.
Hey, thank you, Joe. The first question, we tried to put these in a logical order, but I'm not sure there's a way to make them perfectly logical, but we'll just start with the first one and take it from there. And this comes from one of our students. What are the essential skills musicians or artists, dancers, composers, should develop in order to successfully create their own path? Gary, you want to start?
Oh man, you would start with me, and I don't have a successful path or anything, but I'll try to lie. I think for me, I think the number one thing is the love of craft, loving what you do, you know, because it's hard. This is not hard. It's glamorous when people take your picture, you're sitting around looking pretty, but it's just not an easy way to make a living as an artist. So you must love your craft and ask yourself, is this something that you want to do, or is it something that you must do? You have to open yourself up to humbleness. You have to be willing to be lesser than what you think you are sometimes, and reduce some of the ego, because as artists, I believe we have to have a healthy amount of that, or a healthy amount of something, alcohol or something, in order to get through it. You know, humbleness is always one of those things that I sort of reach for. The ability to be coached, the ability to listen and to hear what other people think about, particularly your professors or the people who you aspire to be, or your friends that you respect, or your friends that you don't respect, people who are watching your art. You know, just being the ability to listen, discipline, and focus. You know, dancers, We spend hours and hours in a studio, with people normally, except now it's COVID-19. So we spend hours and hours in the studio by ourselves a lot of time. Just holding on to that discipline and knowing that you have to keep your focus. Imagination, yeah. You gotta imagine, you gotta see yourself. You gotta see yourself in one place or another. You have to see yourself achieving different sort of accomplishments that you want to achieve. For me, which has been huge, especially when I was young, it was managing my fears and my confidence. A lot of times I missed out on stuff because I was too afraid to be in the room with people who I thought were better than I was. And so it took me a while to maintain my focus so that I could understand that I was just as privileged to be in that room as everybody else. I deserve to be in there just as much as anybody else did. And managing your finances, my young people. Watching how because I'm telling you, life as an artist can sometimes be difficult. I've had a banana sandwich. Yes, I've had that. I've had a banana sandwich, just trying to make ends meet, so managing those finances, trying to predict where you want to be down the road. And I think one of the biggest things that I can really offer, and the last thing that I'll offer, because I'm running off with my mouth, is seek out a mentor. Find someone who is willing to share their experiences with you. That has been one of the things that has saved my life many a time.
Thank you, Gary. Anybody want to feedback on that? Damondre, you have anything to offer?
I would just say, it's sort of contradictory, but in addition to all those great things Gary said, and they're all spot on, you have to be vulnerable and have a tough skin at the same time. And one of the reasons is, as an artist, at least for me, I'm not creating it for anyone. It's for me that I get to share, but everyone's not going to be into it. And there's going to be people who will tell you that they're not into it. But by the same token, allow yourself to be vulnerable to potentially use that negative feedback in addition to all the positive feedback you get in order to create a better version of your art.
Awesome. Ingrid?
Yeah, I think, I resonate with all of these answers. For me, I guess what I had wished I had known maybe a little bit earlier was that if I actually know where that path leads versus just kind of being on the path that people think I should be on, but really visualizing what is it I want to accomplish with my music or with my career, so that I have that constant focus. Because it's so easy to get distracted and then forget, or even like sometimes just, are the things I'm doing actually aligning myself with the thing I want to accomplish? By having the destination, and there can be many destinations throughout a life, it doesn't just have to be one, but I think it helps me really actually accomplish that and keep my mind focused on that. And I find that very helpful. So Gary and Damondre, you've said all of those things, and I just, for me, this is the one that I had wished I had known just a little earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our students see us where we're at.
Yeah.
Right? We're here. I love being in academia. I love the opportunity to teach, and they see that. So I'm going to ask Damondre this, and Gary and Ingrid, I want you to piggyback on this. So they see us here and they want to know, what do we do first? What are the first steps? I mean, and granted, okay, everybody's got a different, like we've got a dancer, we've got a euphonium artist who found himself conducting, right? And we've got a composer who's teaching theory, right? Not from this country. So everybody brings a varied experience. So Damondre, the kids are asking like, what are the first steps? I don't know how to answer that. So I'm going to give it to you.
All right. Yeah, that's a great question. And I can just tell you what happened with me. I was maybe the most curious musician I knew at my time at the University of Alabama. And it started when I was in high school. You know, I had aspirations to play at a high level, meaning have my skill set be just extraordinarily high, you know, and I knew for every mistake I made, that wasn't the excellence that I was striving for. I had a real keen interest in all forms of music coming out of high school: jazz, classical, pop, R&B, certainly hip hop and rap. That's what I grew up on. And, you know, my interest in jazz led me to playing trombone. You know, my interest in all things music led me to want to conduct, like want to peer into, you know, what a piece of music was about. So I conducted my first concert as an 11th grader. And so I was always kind of into it that way. And that curiosity stayed through my undergrad years for sure. So I took composition lessons, I took conducting lessons, I took trombone lessons and played in the ensembles. Obviously, I took euphonium. So I just stayed curious, and I made my course schedule, you know, support my curiosity. I didn't cut off any of the other kinds of music that I thought I was interested in. And I tried to be as good as I could be at all of it. So I was extremely active. I conducted, you know, chamber music on faculty concerts. You know, you know, played in the orchestra, principal trombone, played lead trombone in the jazz band, in addition to playing principal euphonium in the wind ensemble. So I just kept all of my interests going. I was writing music for my friends, for them to play on their recitals, concert, you know, arrangements and different things. And as I got on into my time, you know, I started to shed some of the things that I wasn't as good at. So composition left, you know, stayed on the wayside, you know, and I focused more on trombone playing, euphonium playing, obviously, and conducting. And that became the basis of my first job. I taught low brass at Alabama State University and started the wind ensemble there my next year. So it was just by being curious. So to me, that's the first step, is stay interested.
That's great advice. And again, see, people see where you're at and not how you got there. And to hear that story is really helpful for our students. I really appreciate that. Ingrid, anything to add on your part? I know there's an interesting story.
Yeah, and I think, you know, sometimes when, you know, we're all in academia, there's that straight path, right? You get each degree and then you get the academic job. And I have to say, you know, as you mentioned, I'm an assistant professor, so that's an entry level you know, position, yet I'm, you know, I'm sort of more the age where, you know, maybe I should be full professor, but I had many other, you know, directions that I was going. I, you know, worked with not-for-profit organizations. I learned how to grant write. I learned how to, you know, run a new music ensemble. That helped me understand how things are put together. And as one of my former mentors, teachers, and wonderful former UMKC professor reminded me, Jim Moberly reminded me, that I told him one time, like after my master's, I told him, it's like, yeah, I definitely don't want to teach. Nope, I do not want to teach. And, you know, at the time, it was really true, and it was right for me, because I didn't feel like I had actually yet something to teach in composition. I needed the experience of just composing and doing other things before I felt confident that I actually could pass something on to, you know, somebody getting a degree in composition. So I took many years off between my master's and doctorate. And during that time, my desire to actually want to teach and be in academia grew. And my knowledge that I brought in from all of these, you know, not-for-profits I worked for with Steve, also at the Youth Symphony and at New Ear and all of those local organizations, and then Park University, running that music department, it just helped me really focus in how I want to, you know, spend hopefully, you know, the later part of my life in terms of teaching. But it wasn't a straight line at all. But I feel like all of those experiences made me the teacher I am now. And I don't only focus on teaching composition. I focus on, you know, the holistic approach. What are all the paths we can take to contribute to our community? Because ultimately, every musician, every artist I know are huge contributors to building community. And I think we need that more than ever.
That's beautifully said.
Ingrid, do you want to talk about anything, like, how was it different, same, Germany. You're from Germany. I know you grew up there. How did the first steps look there? Would it be the same here as it is there, or would it be different?
It's a little different in my experience. I'm almost on my 30-year mark in the US. So I have lived way longer in the US now than I did in Germany. And I didn't go through the academic system. In Germany, I did all the pre-academic stuff. We have a lot of conservatory training in Germany during high school and things like that. But I wouldn't be an expert how it is now in Germany. So,
Gary?
Oh man, I came into academia pretty late in life. I've only been in the university system or the conservatory about 8 years. I began my dance career in Atlanta in the 70s, Atlanta, Georgia, in the 70s. But long before that, I always wanted to dance. All my entire life, I wanted to dance, but I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, and there were nobody directing little black boys to a ballet class or directing a little black boy to a dance class. I learned how to dance in my community. So dance to me has always belonged to the community because that's where I learned it from. That's where I got my first love of it. My first kiss of dance was in the community. So I've always felt it's important for me, and you said it quite well, Ingrid, is to stay in the community and give back to the community because they are the people who made me who I am. And I started off dancing pretty late. I might have been 18 years old, and I was an African dancer with the dance company. The first time I went into the class, that was it. I was smitten. That was all that I knew, and my whole life just went. It just tunneled right down to that because I finally was able to fall into the path that I was destined to be in. And I had watched it for years and years and years, but I thought you had to be discovered. I didn't know that I really thought you had to be dancing at a party and somebody walk up to you and say, man, you should come to Hollywood. Or seriously, which is nuts. But I had a lot of beautiful people around me supporting me. I started dancing with Barbara Sullivan Atlanta Dance Theater. And then I moved to go to school at California Institute of the Arts, which is in Valencia, which is where opened up a whole other realm of possibilities for me. And that's when I first started being really exposed to the world of people who are not like me, non-Black people or people who were not where I was from. And so I had a lot of encounters inside of that sort of shaped me into and pushed me into different directions. From there, I lived out in LA and I lived back and forth in New York. And before I came here, I was founder. I was a founder of a dance company that is now 25 years old. This year, we celebrate our 25th anniversary. So I came to academia via all of those experiences, and nothing in my life, I'm so blessed. I can say nothing in my life was really planned. It just kind of like popped up, and I was like, DeMondre just said, I wanted to get better, and I wanted to get better and better and better at what I was, and I wanted to share myself, and I wanted to grow, and I wanted people to be proud of me, and I loved dancing. And in the meantime, inside of that, I was choreographing. I've been choreographing my entire life. I've always been telling people what to do. Always. Which way to go? I've been always telling people that, So, choreography came pretty organically to me. That's how I made my living at one point. Once I finished my dance career, is being a choreographer and choreographing for different theater companies and dance companies and whoever would ask me, whoever had a check or didn't have a check and had a great reason to have me there, So. It was like you said, Ingrid, it was a path that sort of wound around, and here I am,
Gary, you talked about some of your obstacles that you faced a little bit, about just who you were, where you're from. You want to elaborate on that? And then, Andre, if you have any obstacles that you want to talk about growing up that we can be better in 2020, or we can, learn from and try to improve and make more beautiful? What do we want to talk about?
I've been spending the last few days here, and I did this thing that was called Scholar Strike, where the many professors in higher education went on strike for 2 days and withdrew their labor from their different universities. And I spent a lot of time online looking and reading and watching and discussing. And, I'm happy that I did it because it brought back the urgency that I've felt, that I've been feeling, but I think it's been on a low grade boil of just making sure that people who look like me and people who don't look like me and people who are at disadvantages have the opportunity to go for their dreams, or to at least dream what they dream and to see it safely. I think one of my biggest things that I can really call an obstacle has actually been systematic racism. It's just been that. It's me knowing that a lot of the things that I encountered that were negative was oftentimes because of who I was. It was oftentimes I would seek jobs with companies that wanted to bring me in as a token, or who wanted to, who didn't bring me in because I didn't have the right complexion. I remember somebody telling me, and this is a long time ago, I've never told anybody this before, but I auditioned for video back in 1970 something, when videos were just becoming really, really popular. And I went to audition for this video, and I'm not gonna say who it was. And I thought I did pretty well, and I didn't do well in auditions, but I thought I did pretty well. And the person told me that I was too dark, that they needed a light-skinned Black guy for this particular part. And so it seems as though that has been one of the things, that has always been sort of like around the smoother path, which there are no smooth paths, especially as an artist, but paths that could take me in a little bit more of a direct angle, has been the fact that I may be different, or that I may be Black, or, so that's one of the biggest obstacles I think that I've run into, other than me, myself, really understanding that that was an obstacle. And me understanding that not only that was an obstacle, but it may have produced some of the other stuff inside of me that was stopping me from going forward. So, yeah.
Thank you, Gary. Ingrid?
Yeah, I resonate with that, Gary, as well, because I had a lot of doubt myself, that I realized as I got older, it's like I was the one that was holding myself back at that time. It's like this emotion, like I'm not good enough. And I always wondered, because I did, grow up in a musical family, and I had all the support to be a musician, and I'm German, so I'm in that Western, white, European classical tradition as well. So things were easy in that way. And I always wondered how I got so much doubt, and in my own abilities. And I realized actually it was sort of interesting. It actually happened fairly recently when I got this job at KU. I had this experience. This is the first time I experienced it face to face. So I went to a conference. It just been announced I got this job, and I happened to be the first woman composer on the faculty at KU. And I go to this composers conference, and a professor of composition comes up to me and goes, "Oh, congratulations! You got the job at KU, I heard." And I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then the second thing he said was, "Oh, I heard they wanted to hire a woman." And there was no recognition in that moment by this person, who I'm also not going to name, but that's an insult, and it took me aback, and I realized that even though I had great experiences in my degrees, I was always felt supported. I think, it wasn't as common, growing up. I had Clara Schumann as a role model, but I never actually learned she was a composer until I was an adult. She was a composer, and she was a pianist, an educator in Germany. She was on the German mark and it literally listed educator, pianist, Clara Schumann. It never even mentioned she was a composer when the mark was still our currency. And so I think, as you know, I do believe I had it easier, especially in the U.S., being a foreigner from a country that's, people don't feel threatened by. I definitely had it easy being an immigrant in the U.S. versus, some of my students that I see right now who are really struggling with some of this, with this atmosphere that's just really, really difficult right now for foreigners in this country. And of course, not to mention, as you were mentioning, race and everything that's going on. It's just very tricky right now for many people.
Andre?
Yeah, great. My thing is, it's obviously similar to both of you, but in some ways very different. I've never had a problem with confidence. Like that's never been one of my issues. Being fat, I've been fat all my life. That's one thing you kind of struggle with a little bit. Society definitely, suggests that, being fat is a negative and so on and so forth. So other than that, that's probably the only lack of confidence, and that was, I hate to mention it because it was like a speck on the thing. But I was, in addition to my confidence, I was, pleasantly dumb. Like I didn't know anything. And so I was just going my path because that was the path I was on. Like I didn't have any, support. And I don't mean that I had great support, but it wasn't for music. It wasn't for my academics. It was just support as a human, hey, here's your meal, take your bath, here's your new clothes for school. I had support in that way, but I didn't have anybody driving my career path. And I'm grateful for that. I also feel like, I understood that being Black was going to be a disadvantage for me. And so I assumed that it would be. And so it didn't mar how I thought about things. And this is from a pretty early age. And so every opportunity that I've gotten, whether there was some kind of affirmative action or whatever, I assumed that I wouldn't have gotten it if I weren't good at what I did. So that's essentially the opposite of that response Ingrid spoke about. I would say, well, luckily I'm good at it, and that would have been my response, to the person who said that to me. Luckily there's not many people better at this than I am. That would have been my response. And that's, I've never had that issue of being able to, say something like that and sort of mean it. The other part is I play the euphonium. It doesn't have a place in the normal classical music world. And I didn't know that until I was in like grad school. I really didn't realize what it meant that I played this instrument that didn't have a home in the orchestra, that didn't have a bell cow soloist, traveling the world, making a living. We laugh, but I didn't know. I auditioned for the Marine Band in my senior year. I make the finals. The first thing you have to do when you make the finals is they weigh you. And so if you're not military specs, you can't be in the band. I don't care how good you play. And that was my first sort of like, wow, okay, I didn't realize, interesting. And I literally graduated from the University of Alabama at that point. I was headed to Wisconsin for graduate school. And so because of that, I have sort of a just kind of global chip on my shoulder. I'm Black, I'm fat, I grew up poor. I didn't come from that musical background, and I play an instrument that I'm still explaining to people what it is. Even now, 2020. So because of that, that's the skin I'm in. That's the skin I've been in for as long as I knew what skin I was in. And again, throughout my formative years, I was just walking my path ignorantly. And I'm grateful for people keeping it that way, not telling me that I should switch to trombone or switch to some other instrument because I'm not going to be able to make a living, this, that, and the other. you know, the things that we get now, because we're so afraid of graduating people in music because we're afraid that they're not going to get employed. I love this. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. So it didn't matter what happened when I was at my youth. I just figured if I were good enough, I would be able to get past whatever obstacle it was.
I'm going to jump. We have a question I think that sets up really well. So I'll start with Demondre. And then maybe Gary and Ingrid, right? What's the best advice, knowing where you are now, that you would have given young Demondre about pursuing this career in the arts? Anything different?
Sure. Yeah. To be perfectly honest, I would have switched to trombone. Truly, I would have switched to trombone, and I probably would have gotten a master's in orchestral conducting, because that's what really resonates with me. You know, is that music in particular resonates with me the most. You know, when I think about music, it's the orchestra that I hear, and it's that score. You know, those scores that I want to touch and analyze and deal with. You know, from Bach all the way, you know, through. You know, it's that music that I want to deal with. But you know, I'm grateful because I'm not sure I would be as successful had I switched, because then the expectations get piled on. You know, okay, this great player switched to another instrument that he's at some point, you know, then the expectations, and all of a sudden I get this built up tension, and the things that I see in my students that I try to coach out of them, I probably, does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, you know, I think we all get that question. You know, what would you say to your younger self? I would say, you know, be patient, but I can't talk to my younger self, so here I am.
Right. True.
But yes, it does make sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm grateful that I wasn't able to tell my younger self that.
Right.
I've had an opportunity to play trombone in a major orchestra. You know, I've played trombone alongside of Joe Alessi and the greatest players in the world. It happened anyway.
Right.
And it was my path that was supposed to be. So I still feel like if you walk in your path in an earnest, honest way, where it's not about what the perception of you is, but it's really your path, not the one that you feel like you should be on, then man, the chips will fall in the right order. I haven't seen it not work.
Demondre, that's beautiful. Thank you. Gary?
Oh, Demondre, man, that it's so interesting that you asked that, because the best advice that I got that I could give my younger self is what somebody told me when I was young, which I heard, but I didn't hear. And I heard it almost when I was 40 is when I heard it. He said, because I asked him, I walked up to him, he was my artistic director, Rudy Perez, he's passed now. But I was like, Rudy, you know, I'm really, really worried about whether or not I'm gonna make it, because I was really broke at that time. And, you know, I was almost close to being homeless, and that was the week of the banana sandwiches. And so all of that was like weighing down on me. And he said, Gary, really? He said, he said, this is what I would tell you, is all you have to do is keep your head down and keep working hard, because everybody who's not working hard will fall away, and they're gonna point you in the path that you need to go to. You keep working hard, you keep being yourself. I know who you are, and you really know who you are. Just keep working hard. And I didn't, when I heard it, it was kind of like oh yeah, this old man told me this, whatever, you know, but it's absolutely the truth. It's absolutely the truth. It's been the hard work, it's been the work, and it hasn't been hard. It's been like an easy burden, which is, I think, Andrew Young, the name of his book with Martin Luther King. His life with Martin Luther King, I think the name of his book is An Easy Burden. But that's what it's been. All of the work has just been the best, coolest, most pleasant burden that I can think of, you know. And even though life has been, it was rough, I would not trade 1 second of it. Okay, maybe one. There are not many seconds that I would trade for it, you know, because I've been blessed. I've been really, really blessed. And it's because I knew I had to stay focused. I had to do what I needed to do, and I had to just keep working on myself, work on my choreography, work on my dance, work on my teaching, work on all of that. And it it has made me happy today.
That's beautiful. Boy, you all inspire me. Ingrid.
Yeah, wow. I feel the same way. I feel very grateful for my experiences, and of course it's exactly why we are who we are. So it's really hard to answer that question, what would I tell my younger self? But I have given this advice, and I wish I had honestly let go of it a little earlier, which is let go of perfectionism, because it really, for me, it kept me from experimenting, and it kept me from really blossoming for a long time, because I was afraid of like just, not doing it perfectly right. And actually, sometimes making a mistake and just saying, oh, I made a mistake, let me do this. It actually is so freeing, and it is so, yeah, the learning that happens during that is so much bigger. So, even though, I'm grateful where I'm at, I try to, because a lot of students have, I think, I don't know what it is about, students, but I experience that with students, that perfectionism is somehow trained in, especially with musicians. And it doesn't mean not working hard, because I do believe what Gary said is absolutely, the time investment and loving what you do and doing it is absolutely what needs to happen. But this idea that there is like this one perfect way of doing it, it just doesn't serve. It really is constricting. And so that I would tell I wish I had known a little earlier.
The unfortunate thing about that is, modeling has always been, the sort of crown jewel way that artists develop themselves, because we're drawn to a certain part of the art. And now, I'm sure all of us are guilty of this. We've put out a product at some point that is perfect in our eyes. We were able to edit it just so. Ingrid has that premiere and goes, man, I can't believe I let measure 17 go like back, and you tighten it up. Same thing with the recording. I can't have that pitch be that low right there. So we've created, this perfect environment that students then try to model. So for example, I thought of myself as a really good player coming in like my freshman year of college. I can't play anything that my freshmen at either school can play. I couldn't have played anything that year that they're trying to play now. And it's because the bar keeps getting higher and higher. And it happens in every artistic discipline, whether it's sports or what we do, performing arts, to anything that's modeled. Once the bar gets established so high, the learning curve to get to it grows exponentially, but the bar still stays the bar. And so in a sense, I try to remind my students that, hey, look, the product that you admire, that does represent my playing, but not at any given moment. At any given moment, something can go off the rails, and you've heard that before too. So don't forget that happens, and it doesn't hurt my career. You're studying with me, and that happens every single time I play a concert. But you're here to work with me. Don't forget that I'm a human being.
Are you talking about me again?
No.
I mean,
That's so interesting, because I think dance is such an ephemeral art. It's there for that moment, and then it goes away. The way that you did it at 6 o'clock would be completely different than the way you did it at 6:30. Everybody will see that performance and take home that performance. So they can't take home a recording. They would take home that performance when you were amazing, just completely, your choreography just went boof, and everybody's like, yeah, that is, that's it. And then they'll come back and something's off. And they're like, what happened? So they can't bring back that videotape. That's the interesting thing about dance, that I think, and it's the ephemerality of it makes it such a, so precious. And so you end up loving it so much. And it's not necessarily the perfection that you're going for every time. It's that perfection at that moment. You know what I mean? It's that perfection at 6:30. you know, their perfection at 7:02, you know. So it's so interesting to hear you talk about that, Demontre. It just really is about how you can go back and fix that little piece. I wish we could do that. I would be so gorgeous on videotape right now. You'd be like this. Why don't, is that Barishnikov's brother? No.
So I'm looking at the questions, and I feel like we've answered a fair amount of these questions already. We'll come back to them just through our dialogue right now. But I've worked with you, Gary, several times. We've worked on projects together. We're on a committee together now at school. Ingrid, the same with you. You've been my kind of boss with the youth company, and I've commissioned works from you for groups, and I've couple groups, and Demontre, I haven't worked specifically with you, but I know you've worn a lot of hats. So here's when someone's trying to be, and this is for our students, if they want to make it, right, and they want to forge a path of whatever their value set is, and a lot of the people think that singularity of focus will do that, and I think it can, but I also think learning from other genres and seeing the world holistically and just watching someone talk at a restaurant or how people interact or whatever, or see a kid cry, or all these things can become part of our art. So when we collaborate as artists, talk about some of your, and let's use wind ensemble since this is a wind ensemble thing. If you have any if you have any background in that you might want to talk about collaborating with wind ensemble. Gary, I'm going to put you on first. We did Waterfront, and we've done we've done a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah.
So go.
And I think the most compelling and the thing that I still feel in my heart right now, like at this very moment, is that moment when the music and the dance matched. When everything came together and you and I were standing there, we had talked about crazy stuff, and we had kind of disagreed, and we had agreed, and then you saw me at moments when I wasn't my best, and you know, and the things that when everything came together, and the wind ensemble was absolutely like pitch perfect in my ear. Yeah, I don't know, I'm sure yours they weren't. And the dancers were just so on it. It showed the power of art and the power of spirituality, because you cannot do that in a test tube. You can't. It has to be human connections that make all of that happen. And my seeing, when I saw the movie when I was a little boy, I would have never thought that I would be in a room trying to choreograph that particular, it just did not. It didn't even make it on the waterfront with Marlon Brando as a ballet. Are you kidding me? Who would have ever thought about that? But the time, your passion inside of it, and my passion, and the way you coach your musicians, and the way I coach my dancers, and the talent of the musicians, and the talent of the dancers, and everybody who supported that thing just made it such a spiritual, almost church-like experience for that moment. So it was one of the things that I'll always remember, you know. And if we don't have those moments in our lives where we actually feel our art piercing us, and we actually can see what it's doing to other people, that moment right there is, I mean, I can't even find a word. I bet you they have some amazing German word for it, because
this long.
They always have this word. You're like this. How did you come up with that word? It describes everything I'm feeling. You know, and I bet you it's in there. You know, it's like this thing about humanity and why art is so integral to who we are as people.
Sometimes I listen to students and they're like, "Do you like band? Do you like orchestra? Which is better? I want to do orchestra. I don't like band." And it truly, I conduct orchestra. I conduct band, I conduct chamber music, I conduct new music. There are 12 notes that we manipulate, right? And I'm like, why? And we're in a very disjunct world right now, right? So it just doesn't seem congruent to me to silo ourselves more in the arts, especially that are not standing on very fertile ground these days. You know, it seems like, you know, we're going to put us all in silos. No, we need to hold hands as much as possible and be in this together and advocate for each other, I think. So Ingrid, I don't know, sorry for my little diatribe, but I in that project that Gary's talking about, we had the 60 kids in the wind ensemble, and we had, I don't know, 30 dancers. What do we
Yeah,
do?
about 30 dancers, yeah.
And the band danced, and then we choreographed, and we put them in costumes, and we did all kinds of cool stuff. But the kids got to know the dancers, and the dancers got to know the musicians, and they got to see the way this body moves, and then they get to put that in a phrase in Mozart, or put that phrase in Higdon, or put that phrase in Stotzel's music, and like really learn and grow from that. Ingrid, sharing this, I know you're passionate about this too.
I am, and the reason there's many composers who write for electronic instruments or the computer, and I love that human interaction, actually even more than the performance. Like when I come to a rehearsal and I get to actually be there during the learning process, it can be really really special. And I think it's always special, especially large ensemble, that so many people have committed so many hours to put this thing together that I care about. And it's very humbling, really. And Steve, the UMKC Wind Ensemble performance in February was one of my last large ensemble performances this year. And it was even if there had been 100 more, that performance was such a highlight, because that ensemble was so musical, and it was just really, especially because the piece is like 10 years old now. And as Demondre was saying, like the bar keeps getting higher. These students they're so good at their instruments now, that pieces that were so hard now suddenly, like, they're just effortless in their, it's like, it's really amazing to me. But I'm looking for that emotional connection, and you can only have it with for me, I can only have it with real people and not with the computer. And collaboration, of course, music is physical. I'm teaching orchestration. I actually talk about the, orchestra and the wind ensemble being choreographed, because it's people moving together. We forget that. Composers forget that it's a human being that's going to make a sound that takes a physical body. And it's so important. And of course, Gary, you always are thinking about how the body moves, but it's important for us all to remember that as musicians as well.
It's beautiful. Demondre, anything?
Yeah, sure. I interact with wind ensemble in 3 different ways. One as a conductor, one as a soloist that's playing music that's dated, meaning it already exists. And I've had the beautiful experience of bringing to life pieces as a conductor and as a soloist. And so it's like a different thing. When I'm, as the teacher of record for a wind ensemble, my job is to educate best I can through that music that we're playing. It really does feel like teaching. And I have a real desire to teach music. And so, like you said, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be choir or whatever. One of the things I hate is that we split conducting up, band conducting, orchestra. That's so dumb. That's the dumbest thing ever. It's so stupid. But that's just me. I'll leave that there.
I agree.
To teach with honesty and fervor, and be musically vulnerable myself on the podium, as opposed to just standing there with my wand doing that. So that's a cool way to deal with it. Coming in as a soloist, playing a piece that people know, I want to meet their expectations of what they know, and I want to try to inspire them with the way that I play and my humanity towards them and that conductor. That's a cool thing for me. It's created, grad students for me. It's created other work opportunities. It's made best friends just by going in and being human in that experience. Bringing to life a piece of music for the first time might be the most awesome thing.
Wow.
It's just incredible to take, what Ingrid wrote and unpack it through your own eyes, you know, as a conductor or as a soloist, and then bring it to light in its first way, the first way it'll ever be conceived of. It gets to come out. And that's, to me, that's a really powerful and unique responsibility to a piece of music. And I hold it to such high regard. And so it requires all of my intellect, all of my love and passion, you know, and a good bit of my time in order to make sure that that first performance is not only representative of that composer whom I hold in such high regard, but that it represents me and it doesn't come across as being fool's gold or somehow contrived at all.
Mm.
So you need to work with people to go through that experience. You need to talk with the composer if you can. You need to, you know, get that conductor's viewpoint if they're going to get the premiere. So there's a lot of dialogue that goes into making that singular experience magical, and you never get to do that again. And so it's unique to that moment.
Go.
And so I take such pride and care in that moment. So it's amazing to interact with people like Ingrid said in that way, that very specific way.
Just for our listeners that are watching, we'll put a link on the bottom of Ingrid's piece, Cantoray, that she's talking about that we played 10 years ago. We premiered it, and it was 10 years later, and I said, I'm going to let a student conduct it. And because they need to have this opportunity to work with Ingrid too, and it was awesome. It was so beautiful.
Wow.
My highest recommendation for this piece, it's an always flowing piece, and it's stunningly unique and beautiful. And it is not easy all the time.
I know.
but it's worth the effort. I will tell you that.
Awesome.
So we've heard a couple of things reoccur. My dear friend Steve passes forward the knowledge that music is an apprenticeship art form. And I've heard everybody speak to some type of mentorship or experience that has either helped you or a way that you promoted yourself. So our students want to know, just kind of like from your little list of things, what are some things you do and you shouldn't do when you're working in this discipline as far as like making connections? Like, and I can almost guess what most of you will all say, but they don't want to hear it from me. So I'm going to ask Gary first, you know, some do's and don'ts for us as like artists.
Man, why would you ask me that? There are no don'ts. Yeah, I just think, you know, I think you have to, the do's is being prepared. You must be prepared. The don'ts is don't be unprepared. You have to be ready for each and every opportunity. You really, 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 really do. Stephen, I'm gonna be really, really clear and honest with you all. I haven't ever answered that question, you know, because I feel that I almost feel like we are divinely pointed to where we need to go as artists. And if we are, I hate to use this word because people can wear it out, authentic to our vision, and we continue to be clear and true about what we do, we will present ourselves in a way to the people who need to be and who should be working with us exactly at the right time. So the only thing I can say really is what I said, is being prepared. Don't be unprepared. Don't just stand at the door. When the door opens, you need to have on your best whatever. You need to get through that door and present yourself the way that Demondre is smiling right now, with all of that beauty and all of that confidence, and get in it and show who you are. Because, you know, you work too hard. That's the one thing I learned. That's the thing that turned me around, was I worked too hard to screw things up. I had to come to that moment where Jesus had to do this. Gary, you work too hard. Don't let you being not confident and fearful screw this up. You know what you're doing. Get in there and do it. That's probably the most unprofessional advice you can ever hear, but that's
That's great. Ingrid?
I couldn't agree more with you, Gary. I think that you hit it on the spot. It's for me, I think I add to that is, opportunities that I created in my life without realizing I was creating them were actually through service. And because I just wanted to help, and I didn't actually think something would come of it. And there's something, it's just magical that happens when you just give, especially as a student, and when you're building your career, you just freely give. And here's that word, authentically give, because people will know if you give your time because you want something in return. There's an energy that's different. So I do love that word authentic a little bit, even though Gary thinks it's overused. But I think it's really important to start early to develop, and it doesn't just have to be service to music, to the profession. It can be any kind of service. But I think it's an important thing for building community. And then out of that freely will flow opportunities that we cannot predict. This is not a thing where we're like, if I do this, then this will happen and this will happen. It has to be given, and for just because we want to give it. And I still, to this day, of course, as academics, we do have a service requirement, but I never think of it that way. It just, when I start splitting it up, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this service, then I'm aligning with something that doesn't feel quite right to me. But if I think about it as, I can do some good here, and what can I contribute to this particular thing, then suddenly it's meaningful to me. And then I don't mind sitting on that committee if I come in with that attitude. And so I think it continues, but we need to start service as young people. It's an important thing. And like I said, it doesn't even have to be in our field. It creates opportunities in any field service is being done.
And I also think, and I'm going to let Demandre jump in, but I just wanted to say, for me, service breaks barriers for me. Sometimes I'm really afraid to do something, and then I meet new people.
Yeah. When else are you going to meet an English literature teacher if you're on a campus level? Or when are you going to meet the mezzo soprano? Or when are you going to meet the, kazoo player? That's beautiful,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And giving, giving to give, not giving to get.
Yes.
Is the most important part of that. My dues are, make sure, I tell my students, get your team of mentors around you now and keep them there. These are people that you can be the most vulnerable with in different capacities of your life. I have people that I talk to about money, people I talk to about career advancement, people I talk to about music making, people I talk to about marketing. Keep your team around you and continue to use them. Don't think you ever have learned it all, that you don't, bounce ideas off of that small team. And I tell my students, I don't have to be on your team, but you need a team. Make sure it's small, not too many cooks in that kitchen. Make sure it's small and utilize that team. I also pride myself on not making one performance more important than the other. My standard is my standard, whether I'm playing in my living room for my wife and kids, or whether I'm on the stage at Carnegie Hall. It doesn't matter. I play at the level I play. Quick story, I was playing with the major orchestra. I was about to play with the major orchestra, and some of the feedback that I got prior to the performance was, hey, this could be an opportunity of a lifetime for you. Make sure you're well prepared, make sure you play your very best, make sure this and this and this. And I was like, that's all really good. Should I play any different than you've heard me play before? And the answer was no. And I said, okay, thanks very much. I appreciate it. I don't need the extra pressure because I play the way that I play. It doesn't matter what the situation is. So don't minimize any performance. For one, you have no idea who's going to be affected by that performance, good or bad. So keep your level the same, and that takes some of the anxiety away. The don'ts are, don't assume that people are ready to hand you something. You might have to go get it. Don't assume that people are gonna, pull you out of a sea of super talented, well-rehearsed people because you look a certain way or because you did something a certain way. Lastly, do not assume that people you meet for the first time in real life are as casual as your experiences may have been with them on social media. Treat that person with a certain amount of respect and earn the invitation to know them better.
Can I just get like DVDs from both of you just saying everything that you just said? If you just send me that, and I'll just put it on in the morning when I get up, because this, I mean, it's just spot on. It really, really is.
We're getting towards the end here, but I want to give everyone an opportunity to do two things. One of those two things is any final words of wisdom for the next generation of leaders and scholars and dancers and composers and musicians and conductors and whatever. So that's one thing. And then two, it's interesting that we're creating our path, right? But here's the irony of this. I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida. I went to Florida State. I started at a middle school in Ocala. Then if you would have told me I was going to live in Minneapolis or Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Kansas City, Missouri, a town I didn't even know existed hardly,
Right.
it's just like I would have been like, what are you talking about? There's no way that's going to be no way. It's going to be something else. I'm going to be the band director at some middle school in Florida my whole life, or that's what it's going to be. That's what I could see at the time. And always in my life, one of the things that I've tried to really focus on, and I worry about this with a subject like this, to be frank, and Steve, I will be frank. If we are so worried about tomorrow, then we're not maxing out today. And one of my main principles has always been just max it out, max today out, and tomorrow will take care of itself, right? And just try to stay in motion and then if you're doing the right thing, it seems to me that people will notice and it will become attractive and it will become magnetic. And at least that's the way it's gone in my life. I didn't start out at the conservatory in Kansas City or teaching at the University of Michigan. That was, and I don't know if we have a whole community that has to lift us up in order for those kind of opportunities to happen. So I think the synthesis of all these things for our students coming together is really, really remarkable. But final words of wisdom, I guess, Demondre, you were about to talk about. And
Sure. I was going to just bring my comments full circle. I started with my curiosity, and that's where it ends for me. Stay curious, stay hungry and stay curious. There's so much to learn about music. There's so much music to learn. There's so much art to accept and appreciate. So keep your mind wide open to all of those things. And as it relates to your travel, let your journey take care of itself. I happen to live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the town where I grew up. The reason I live here is because I told Indiana University, this is where I need to live. If I can't live here, I can't work at that school. And they were like, okay, let's figure out how to work it out. Because my family and, my wife's work and my kids and their peer group and their school was more important than the prestige, put that in quotes, of working at Indiana University. I have to live with my family day to day. And if they're not happy one day to the next, then what does working at Indiana even mean?
Ingrid or Gary, I don't care, either one.
We are artists, and as artists, it's up to us. And this is Gary talking. As an artist, it's up to me to continue to learn. It's up to me to serve my community. It's up to me to use my art to uplift. It's up to me to love everybody that I can work with as much as I can love them. Sometimes it's difficult. It's up to me to be who I choose to be at this very, very moment. And what I choose to be is a human being who is here to inspire people, who is here to inspire the world, and not in that grand sense of I want to move the world. All I know is that somebody moved me, and it was not somebody whose name that you're reading about in an encyclopedia. It's nobody's whose name that you're going to see on news. That person is the one that inspired me. And just know that people are watching you, and the people who need you want to see you, and they need to see you. They need to be uplifted by you. So go forward, you know, in your life, keep your head, man, keep your head down, work hard. You know, I'm going right back, like DeMondre just said, I'm going to circle right back. Work hard, go forward. Remember community. I love how you so heartfeltly, that's probably not a word, Ingrid said that. I mean, it really, really touched me. It's all about, it's about community to me. So keep those people close to you. You know, your loved ones, like DeMondre said, that's like everything.
Ingrid?
I know, I feel so emotional right now. This has been such an amazing sharing, and I want to thank all of you. It's been really special, a special night. For me, I think I can honestly say that I believe to the core of me that music changes the world. And I am almost 50, and I still have that idealism. I believe it every morning when I walk into the classroom, because it has changed my life and it has changed my world. And it's also changed, you know, I've seen so many people being transformed by music, and it's so powerful. And I think, and that counts for the other art forms too, you know, Gary. But it's so important to remember that as we share with students or share with audiences, that there's a real power and to transform, and I think it's just a privilege being able to do that every day. Even in COVID times, we find ways to inspire each other, to connect, to create music in new ways. And I think that's the power of being in such an art form. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Joe, any final words, Joe?
Well, I need to just thank everyone. I got to tell you from the bottom of my heart, again, I actually was overcome with emotion listening to you all speak and not sure how to surmise any of this, because I miss making music. And I miss seeing my friends and my colleagues that share a passion to do that, and the students. And when I hear you all speak so eloquently and passionately about, Gary, the mentors and the life that you've led to become who you are, and DeMondre, the confidence with which you are able to succeed at so many hats that you wear, and yet do it in such a humble manner that inspires people. And Ingrid, to know that I've known you now for 10 years, and to realize that even on that last performance of a 10-year-old piece, I sat there in awe of the craft you did. I don't have any words except for thank you. You know, the collective spirit of, maybe even on this call where three of us or two of you didn't know each other till this evening, there is a synergy and a connection that all of us feel because of the craft and art we get to do. And I just want to thank you for just restoring that to me when I don't have a chance to do it as I have known for the last 50, years. So I just want to thank you. You all are amazing.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
And
you.
I'll finish by saying a couple things too, and this is COVID related. All of us get some notes from our kids, our students, right? That every once in a while, Professor X, I'm really thankful for whatever. I never got more notes in my life in 27 years of teaching than the month that followed COVID, saying how much, Professor Davis, I just want to let you know that I miss making music so much. And then I was on these panel discussions with some people, and I think I was an outlier, but I'm not sure I'm not right on this. It's not about being right, but I do think that making music is going to be, and bank dancing in larger groups is going to be more valued when we come out of this than it's ever been. I think there's a real opportunity after we get out through this thing that we might be the one thing that the world really needs, especially if you look at the next 60 days about what we're going to go through here in America. It's going to be divisive. It's going to get ugly. And to me, the one thing that I really want is for us to hold hands metaphorically and love each other. And what I witnessed today are 4 outstanding people, Joe included, those 4, that are so selfless and beautiful at their core. And none of us are perfect. None of us. And we're all just trying to do the best that we can, but these people embody it in their daily walk. So one of the great selfish joys about this, the 11 lectures, are that we could invite whomever we wanted. And we invited these people for a reason. They are where they are because of their person, their abilities, their work ethic, and 3,000 other ideals that are impossible to describe. But Ingrid, I love you. Damondre, I can't wait to get to know you some more. We're going to bring you to campus to interface with our kids. But everything I've heard, by the way, people talk really good about you behind your back. So that's good. And Gary, you know, I'm LOVE, heart, BFF, whatever.
I can never do that right.
So, to everybody else, to the students, I hope you've left this hour inspired. And I know you're going to provide us amazing summaries for these. And if you're watching this and you're not in Kansas City, you're on our YouTube channel. If you're in Kansas City, we'll treat you like gold. Just come say hi. If you're in Bloomington or Tuscaloosa or Lawrence or here in Chicago with Gary's dance troupe or Kansas City here, find a reason to get with these people. Buy them a cup of coffee or have them buy you a cup of coffee because you'll be inspired when you leave it. So I love you all. I wish you well. I can't wait to see
you all so much.
at the same time. So let's thank our panelists.
So good to meet you all. It is just so good to meet you.
Great to meet everybody. Thanks.